Welcome to the Andy Staples Show. It is a Dear Andy, Dear Ari edition and a very topical one. Got a question that came in right after the Elite Eight games last night that is it's pretty interesting. And but first, Ari, we got to talk about you got a future here in basketball that there's a chance you might hit.
Yeah, a buddy of mine gave me the future 36 or something to 1 that Miami would win the championship. So
When was this?
Early January, I think.
Woo.
Yeah, there's somebody else that got them in November for 100 to 1 that we know. But yeah, the thing that stinks is I have, for full disclosure, I did some hedging yesterday on this bet because if you watch the whole Texas-Miami game,
right,
like Texas kicked Miami's butt for like 80% of that game. Yeah. So when Miami got back even, I bet that Texas would win at even money, just thinking that Texas was going to win. So I've cut into my potential winnings. And now the problem for me is UConn is favored by 5 next week, and they're minus 225 to win.
Yeah.
So I have a really terrible hedging opportunity again if I want to go down that road again.
UConn is clearly the best team left. Whether they are going to win it is another story, because we've seen this entire tournament, the best team doesn't necessarily always win. So
like I'm like happy Miami won. But if UConn comes out and just beats them badly on Saturday, then I will lose the hedge that I made, and I will lose money on top of the bet that I lost. So like my hope is that Miami will at least be up by 5 or get up to a point in the first half where I can get in on UConn even to continue the hedge. Because the good news is that if Miami gets to the championship, they will likely be favored against whoever they're playing based on the other half of, and that would make it easier to hedge. But I am in like a exciting yet uncomfortable scenario as a result of what I did yesterday. So
you know who's not in an exciting scenario right now, Ari?
Who's that?
Ticket brokers in Houston.
They're
dying. Like as soon as Texas lost yesterday, they were like, "Oh, come on," because they don't like last year. There was a Duke North Carolina semifinal. Like,
yeah, no, I know, and that is like the apex of college basketball, right? And the question is, how motivated will people just be to go to the Final Four? No matter who it is.
FAU and San Diego State are public schools. They have bigger student bodies, bigger alumni bases, bigger
than people think. Yeah.
So like for FAU people who maybe they don't even root for FAU normally, maybe they root for Florida or Florida State or Miami, but their the school they graduated from is in the Final Four. They're like, what the hell? Let's go.
Yeah, let's go have a good time. But you might be able to say, hey, we could get into the Final Four, root for a team that we graduated from for a much cheaper price than it typically would be to go to a Final Four, which means there isn't as much demand. So I'm assuming that the ticket brokers, and I'm very curious too, like the ratings will be fine, right? Because everybody likes watching it. Or no one's going to watch it?
No. People want Cinderella in the first weekend. They want brand names in this thing.
But these teams are good. It's not like they're not good.
Well, like FAU won 30 games in the regular season.
Yeah.
Would have made the tournament even if they hadn't won the Conference USA tournament. They were clearly underseeded. But and UConn is really good. UConn's won. That's the thing. UConn has won 4 national titles since '99. Is that right?
Yeah.
So and now the last 2 were kind of crazy because I covered that whole Kemba one, the one where he basically takes over in the middle of the Big East tournament. They go on a wacky run in the Big East tournament and then go win the national title. And then the 14 one was weird too. And Kevin Ollie ends up getting fired not long out. It was like a Gene Chizik situation. But that's a really good basketball program. They're historically good. And then San Diego State has been historically good. Going back to Steve Fisher and Kawhi Leonard and all that. So, but it's tough because I don't think the casual folks, and this is what people who don't want the football playoff to expand, this is what they worry about. They don't want to see a semifinal like this or a national title game like this. But in football,
if you're worried about that, people, don't be. For now, it ain't going to happen. But there was a tweet last night that I read this morning because my timeline on Twitter is like everyone else's where I get 19-hour-old tweets when I open the app. But I saw this one from Dan Wolken from USA Today. Okay. And it said, I don't have time for people who are complaining that Miami took advantage of NIL to build a Final Four roster. Who loses here? Do we want new programs trying to win or the same blue bloods over and over again? And I think the answer to that question, Andy, is we want the same blue bloods over and over again. Like people don't want to act like that.
The occasional new blood. Like we want the occasional Butler. We want the occasional George Mason, but we still want Kansas and Kentucky to be there.
Or you want the team that is viewed as Cinderella to play the big dog because you want to see if they can overcome them.
Or we want the new blood to be Penn State or Wisconsin or Texas, a team that has a massive fan base that is a huge brand name as a university. Why do you think that matters? Why do you think that matters in basketball? It's a lot of it's not that it matters in basketball. It just matters in general. People want to watch something they're familiar with.
No, I know, but if you think about a lot of the teams that are always very good, like Xavier's always pretty good. They don't have a huge student body, do they? Like Gonzaga doesn't have a huge student body.
No, these are real.
I don't know. Creighton almost made the Final Four. They're not like a,
but they're usually good too.
So it's it's about historically recognizable brands.
Or if they're not great basketball brands, at least they're big schools that everybody's heard of. Like Notre Dame's not a good basketball brand, but if Notre Dame were in this thing, it'd be massive.
So here's the thing that I don't understand. Okay. And I think that a lot of people on Twitter, and I'm no basketball historian, but a lot of people on Twitter are saying this has been one of the more entertaining tournaments that we've gotten in a long time. Is that fair to say?
I would agree with that. And it's something that the people who really cover college basketball were saying weeks before the tournament. They were saying there are no dominant teams. There are going to be some wild results in this tournament. It's going to be a lot of
casuals
swings and
have been watching this, right? And I have watched zero basketball, regular season wise, all year, and I've been pretty locked in on the tournament.
Well, I think the gamblers, especially, this is an incredible gambling tournament. And it's always, it's set up for gambling anyway, but I think this particular version of the tournament has been very entertaining for people who like to gamble.
But I'm actually and I'm a degenerate, but I've enjoyed watching some of the games I had no money on. Like that Gonzaga UCLA game that we watched the other night, great. $0 on it. I was locked in. So and by the way, I feel bad for anybody who did have money on that. But the thing that I don't understand is if you watched the entire tournament in its totality or have been keeping your thumb on the pulse of the tournament, how do you stop watching now because the brands aren't?
I don't think you stop watching. I just don't think the new people who come to the Final Four come in.
Got it.
I think the people who wanted to see North Carolina Duke last year, which could be Coach K's last game and ended up being Coach K's last game. That is as good as it gets if you're the TV network
just
broadcasting.
The type of person too that wouldn't watch basketball in general would at least be aware of that. My dad doesn't like basketball, but he knows that Coach K and Duke and North Carolina, anybody who's a casual sports fan wants to tune into that. But I don't think last year should be the bar. That was an incredible.
No, that's an unusual circumstance.
So
and you got a great national championship game too. That was a fantastic national championship game. And by the way, North Carolina is a big name brand. They were not a good basketball team in 2022. They were an 8 seed.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not I'm happy that that's the ratings are their problem, but I am genuinely excited for my own personal reasons, but in general to watch Miami on Saturday.
I just UConn's been destroying everything. UConn's been the only one that has kind of bucked the trend of everybody's even. And they're just kicking the crap out of people. It was halfway close against Gonzaga at halftime, and then they just destroyed them in the second half.
The Miami is actually really good.
Yes.
If you've been watching them play, if they get going,
a good coach.
Yeah. And so anyway, I might have hedged myself out of profit here, depending on and into a pretty big loss if I don't have an opportunity again this time.
Yeah, you need Miami to make the final. But I do think you're in pretty good shape if they do. And again, the tournament has been so unpredictable. Just because UConn crushed Arkansas and Gonzaga doesn't necessarily mean that carries over. So we'll see. But the Miami thing is really interesting for a lot of reasons. And Sam Rubino asked us on Twitter on Sunday night, and I thought this is the perfect lead-in for the Dear Andy, Dear Ari show. Based on basketball and Miami's use of NIL, I think it's time to be scared of Miami football. Men in the Final Four, women a step away with two of the most famous women's athletes on the planet. Only a matter of time for the football team. Thoughts? So let's back it up a little bit. So the men's basketball team is in the Final Four. The women's basketball team lost Sunday night to LSU, which could wind up playing for the national title. We'll see. The women's basketball team has the Cavender twins who transferred from Fresno State. They are very famous on Instagram. They're good basketball players, but they're also very good influencers. The men's basketball team got Nigel Pack from K-State, who was probably the most sought after transfer last season. And that was an interesting situation, Ari. I think you might have been off. I think David Ubbin and I ended up talking about this on the show because in April of last year, remember Nigel Pack transfers from K-State to Miami. John Ruiz, who runs Life Wallet, who's basically running their NIL stuff, tweets out about his deal. Not long after that, Isaiah Wong, who has been Miami's best player, goes, wait a second. I'm the best player. Shouldn't I be getting a little better deal too? And threatens to transfer. And they wind up keeping him too. So yes, they got those programs back. And look, the men's program at Miami has been on the upswing. Jim Larinaga has done a good job there. So it's not like they came out of nowhere. And, you know, I had somebody text me yesterday, like, what if Nigel Pack were still playing at K-State? And the question is, I don't know, like, does Marquise Noel do all of the same things he did if Nigel Pack's on the roster? Would they have gone out and gotten Keontae Johnson? You know, I'm not sure exactly how that would have worked out because Jerome Tang was coming in as a first-year head coach. And so it's really interesting, all the dynamics of this. But we know they are aggressively pursuing NIL stuff in football too. We know they did that with their recruiting class this year. Their recruiting class was a top 10 recruiting class in the country. But I don't know how worried you need to be right now because I think it's going to take longer in football to radically reinvent a roster like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, how many players does it actually take to transform a basketball roster? Two. One?
Maybe
but
one.
They only added one
back.
major piece, right? So in football, the question to me it is, can you buy a national championship? And I think the answer to that question is no.
So far, it's not looking great.
Because there are so many moving parts to a football roster.
I mean, okay.
You've got 85 guys.
We've got the old school people screaming, but people already bought national championships by dropping duffel bags. Okay. We're talking about in the new world. You can probably still drop some duffel bags.
Yeah. I mean, but even the bag dropping programs, there's just so much that goes into putting the pieces together. Right. It's almost like if you
can still mess that up easily.
Like if you know how I kind of like to think about it, like I don't know anything about how to build a car engine, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to go drop $500,000 and get the most advanced, best engine that you could possibly buy and put the pieces in my garage and said, here, Ari, it's yours. That's only 50% of the job, right? Somebody would have to come in and put it together competently in order for it to eventually work the way that you thought. So that to me is always going to be the secret sauce. Also, too, I think it's a lot easier to identify a lottery pick out of high school in college basketball than it is a top 10 pick out of football. Not that the 5-star prospects aren't up and away better, but we had kids who were before the one and done deal jumping from high school and being really good in the NBA.
Right.
So if you're an advanced enough player in high school basketball, it's very apparent very early on in your life that you are
right.
different
And
type of
there's
build.
a reason the NFL has that rule that you got to be 3 years out of high school. It's not for safety reasons. It's because they want to be saved from themselves. Like they want to kind of weed out some people before they have.
But it also hopefully is for a little. I mean, if you put a high school player into an NFL field, I don't care how big
it'd be
they
terrible.
Are, it'd be a safety issue. So the funniest thing to me about this whole thing with Miami is, yes, they signed a top 10 class. I'm assuming a lot of that was NIL, right? But I'm also not going to not give a little credit to Mario Cristobal, who has been a dog of a recruiter everywhere he's gone.
And if you look at the best rated players in their class are big guys, just as Mario's classes were at Oregon.
And the funniest thing about this, Andy, is the head coach at Miami's number one criticism from Oregon fans is that he doesn't know how to put the pieces together. Right? So you have a situation, and I'm not saying he can or can't. I'm just saying if you ask an Oregon fan about Mario Cristobal experience at Oregon, they'll say recruited great, application on the field on Saturdays lacked. And last year was rough. The other funny thing.
And both coordinators left. Or one got fired and one left.
The funniest thing about it is that I believe that Miami signed 4 top 100 players last year in the 2023 class.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama signed 15.
Right.
So like the gap between, being on the upswing and arriving in college football is so stark that like Miami would have to sign 4 classes in a row with at least 8 top 100 players in them each.
Yeah.
For them to be on the same field as an Alabama or a Georgia. So the gap is much bigger. Like in basketball, they don't have the physicality that exists in football that in order for you to be physically equipped to do it. There are mid-major teams in college basketball that can outshoot their opponent with the fouls and how quick they'll blow a whistle with wrong hand placement. You're not physically dominated, to the same degree that you are in football based on just lack of athleticism, size, and speed. And then lastly, their best player in their class flipped to Colorado after not signing, surprisingly, during the early signing period. So, like, when I look at Miami's football program, I look at a program that should be very good. I look at a team that has made strides, maybe with NIL, to improve their team. But I don't look at them as an inevitability to win a national championship based on what they have.
And I think the faster way to use NIL to really change your fortunes in football is through the portal. And if you look at their portal recruiting this offseason, they've gotten some players who were impact players on other teams, but it's not like they were pulling stars off other teams. Like they got an offensive lineman from UCF who was a starter, who was a second team All-American Athletic Conference guy. They got a defensive tackle from Purdue who is a starter, who is an honorable mention All Big Ten. But it wasn't like they're taking the best players off of these teams. And so that's how I would think, do it in football if you really wanted to change your fortunes quickly with NIL. Also, it's not that easy
Andy,
to get somebody's best player, by the way, even if they're at a group of 5 school.
Let me ask you this. So Nigel Pack.
Yep.
You've watched basketball. I don't know. You know more about basketball than me, right? Who is he in college football? Like, let's see if we can come up with like who he is player-wise in football. Like, is he a 4.5-star, 5-star quarterback as of a player?
I don't even know if he's a quarterback. Like, he may be Jordan Addison if we're talking about recruit or transfers. So he in 21-22, his last season at K-State, he averaged 33 minutes a game and 17.4 points a game. So I believe he led K-State in scoring that year. So he's a reliable scorer. And so like Jordan Addison, who is very helpful, but is not necessarily the complete straw that stirs the drink. Like for USC, that was Caleb Williams, obviously.
And somebody like that is essential to a team that wants to win a national championship, but it's not going to be the thing that drives it.
Right. Right.
So, like, my question to you is, like, if in college football, those types of Jordan Addison transfers are starting, will there ever be a day where Miami could get Caleb Williams to leave USC? Like, are we ever going to see a player that can be the straw that stirs the drink, to borrow the way you put it, leave a really good place to go to another really good place?
Well, and here's the problem. Miami's not a really good place right now, record-wise.
Financially, I meant.
Yeah.
To leave a really good place to go to a place that's going to offer them a lot of money. Is that better said?
It is, but I think you'd have to offer a lot more if they're going from a place that's successful to a place that's not successful. I'm not sure that's going to happen. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to take players off a better team from a peer school. Now, maybe from a school that's not considered a peer, maybe one that's considered like a step down.
Well, there were some rumblings that Marvin Harrison was going to transfer to USC, right, on Twitter.
Yes,
there's rumors
those
where people
rumors
are
were
scared.
out there. Yeah,
and I'm trying to think, like, Marvin Harrison is probably a top 10 player in college football, right?
Marvin
Maybe
Harrison does not
5.
need to play college football this season to be a top 10 pick.
But could somebody ever rip Marvin Harrison away from Ohio State because of finances? Or will they always find the money? I'm trying to think, like, Drake May is another example.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft, right?
Yep.
People were talking about how he's just going to go to Alabama. Like, how much money would it take to get Drake May to come to your school? Well, because North Carolina's not going to win the national championship. Not as much as everybody was. Now, and that's the other part of it. Sometimes people are just where they want to be. Like, some people aren't movable. Yeah. But I think that in order for NIL to truly be a buying, or to be the ship that creates a buying atmosphere, that where you could purchase a championship, players that are that good or that influential have to be for the taking.
Yes.
Now I think that you could flip your roster if you're a place like Arizona State or Michigan State or a Power 5 school with a pretty large fan base. If you want to, like, fix some holes, Auburn, another example, right?
Right.
But I don't know if you will ever be able to use the portal and the NIL space in the portal and in the recruiting space to buy enough talent to beat the teams that are constructed to win a national championship. I think
USC is the best example of a roster flip we've seen so far.
And even then, they were 100 miles away.
Right. You know what would have happened to that team had it played Georgia.
But the reason why that roster flip was so special was because they got the Heisman Trophy winner.
Right.
And they still were miles away. Like, I don't even know how many times, like, who could we count on in the last 5 years on one hand transfers that were that influential? Like Justin Fields to Ohio State, Caleb Williams.
We can do it for the entirety of the transfer era. Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts, Russell Wilson. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's the whole list.
Well, I mean, I guess you could make the case that Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray were, but when they transferred, they weren't. But they weren't that yet. Yeah. I'm talking about made products that already were amazing or considered top 10 players in college football flipping.
Yeah, that
and
was
a lot
the
of times
that I just gave you.
Those players, like, if you think about it, Jalen Hurts left Alabama, Justin Fields left Georgia, Caleb Williams left Oklahoma. They're already at places that have cash, that have tradition, and have a national championship background.
All of those were circumstantial. All of them. It was the circumstances that made them leave and not money. It was, and obviously NIL wasn't around for Russell Wilson, for Jalen Hurts, for any of those guys, for Justin Fields. But Justin Fields wasn't going to get the starting job. Caleb Williams wanted to be coached by Lincoln Riley. Jalen Hurts wasn't going to get the starting
Fields
job.
Wasn't a made product yet. When Justin Fields transferred, people didn't know if he was actually any good.
Right. So Russell Wilson, basically, Tom O'Brien had to choose between Mike Glennon and Russell Wilson because they could both leave because they were both graduates, and he chose the wrong one. So like that's how it went. It was more circumstantial than anything else. And that's what I think, especially for players that important. If they're already at a big school that is doing well, they're going to make sure they take care of them.
Yeah. And I don't know if whatever Life Wallet is doing is big enough to outweigh whatever Brinks truck their opposition is also backing up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the roster numbers in football make it for the same reason that we'll never see a Final Four in football like we're going to see in basketball this coming weekend. The rosters are too big. Like you have to have that many. It's not because you could bring Caleb Williams on board. Like if you brought who is a Caleb Williams level player in basketball? Like Carmelo the year he played at Syracuse, Zion at Duke. Like
yeah,
that's the type of player we're talking about. That can change a basketball team dramatically.
I mean, you could have dropped Carmelo Anthony onto Scottsdale Community College's roster, and they would have made
right.
The
and they're making
like
the tournament. Exactly.
Yeah. So like that's the thing too. It's like for as good as Caleb Williams is in football, you couldn't even drop him on USC's roster and created a national champion.
By the way, you gave him the Blitnikoff winner too. Like,
yeah,
imagine if it had just been Caleb Williams.
Not to mention all the elite level prospects that they brought in.
Right.
Could you pluck, those claw machines in an arcade?
Yeah.
So I'm going to grab Caleb Williams' head with a claw machine and I'm going to move him around the country. Where am I going to drop him to win a national championship? Oh, on the rosters that already have amazing players?
Exactly.
Ohio State, Georgia.
Here's an example. Like you put Caleb Williams at Florida right now. Would they win? Would they even win?
Yeah, I was going to say, what about Michigan? Yeah, right.
Okay.
If you put them on Michigan?
Now, if you put them on Michigan, Michigan's a national title contender. Like
they
Michigan
might actually win the national championship.
Yes,
because their thing is one incredible playmaker away from really flipping. Could you imagine dropping Caleb Williams? If I were Michigan, we just gave him the figure it out. Go pay the guy.
Go get
I don't know they have more money than God. Go figure it out.
Can you trade JJ McCarthy? Because JJ McCarthy is a legit NFL prospect. Like he's a very good quarterback in terms of tools. Like, could you trade him? Could you come up with a trade package?
Well, that's the thing. Jaden Davis, the 5-star quarterback out of Charlotte's announcing on Friday, and I think he's going to pick Michigan, which is great. JJ McCarthy is a very good quarterback, very good player. He is nothing in comparison with Caleb Williams. Right. That's not a slight on him. Right. That's a compliment to Caleb Williams.
Caleb
Williams. Could you imagine Columbus, Ohio, if Caleb Williams transferred to Michigan?
Oh, my Lord. They would go insane. I am glad you brought this up, Ari, because my next question comes from a submission from Jesse, one of your readers for your mailbag.
Oh, okay.
You talked about how big of a deal it was that Michigan went into Ohio to grab a player, and Ohio is known as one of the better states to recruit, certainly one that Ohio State has historically kept a firm grip over. On the flip side of that, how good is Michigan as a state for recruiting talent? Have the Wolverines just been keeping everything outside of 5-star QBs home, or is there just less talent to bring into the program? And so that is referring to last week with Jordan Marshall, the running back, who is from Ohio. And he was someone Ohio State wanted, right? And
yes, he had an offer
to Michigan. Yeah,
it was the first time since 2013 that a player in Ohio with an Ohio State offer has chosen Michigan.
That is wild. And it's amazing that we can. That's another thing you can probably name on one hand in the past 20 years. Players from Ohio who Ohio State has wanted who chose another school.
I think it's 7.
Jordan Hicks is the only one I could think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure
the only programs that have done it more than once are Clemson, I believe.
Jackson Carman.
Jackson Carman. And it might have only been once for Clemson, but Notre Dame was really good at it.
Okay.
And Notre Dame did it because Ohio has a lot of very good Catholic high school programs who want, and so if you have a player that wants that atmosphere, it's not an excuse, but that's how Notre Dame was able to do it. Nobody else. Texas did it one time, and that was Jordan Hicks was 2 or 3 years before. And the last time Michigan got a player out of Ohio, Urban Meyer was 69 or 79 days before Urban Meyer was hired. So that gives you a perspective historically on how long it's been. So people are why are you writing a column about one person? Very significant thing. But
that's what I wanted to ask you, because I read the column and I'm trying to figure out, because when it happened, I saw Twitter blow up. Mm-hmm. And my thought was, is this the beginning of a trend, a weakening of Ohio State, or is this just this person wants to go play in this offense at Michigan?
Yeah, I think his parents are Ohio State fans, so I don't know. To me, you never know what is going to happen. Like, he could flip in 6 months to Ohio State, and then that column looks stupid. But it is just another symptom of the decaying stranglehold that Ohio State has on Michigan. It's like, how come in the last 10 years, nobody just happened to want to go to Michigan? Like it's happening now for a reason. Yeah. You know what I mean? And Michigan is the big two-time defending Big Ten champions. And for a large portion of the time that I was on the beat there, they didn't even recruit Ohio. They didn't even try. There was only one big-time recruitment that I think they were involved with, and that was Zach Harrison in 2019, and they did really, really good. Got to the end there, and then he went to Ohio State, and I think they just thought, we're not going to be able to go in there. But now that they're winning, Michigan can go into Ohio, and it's different than it was 5, 4, 3 years ago, you know? So I don't know if this is a trend, but what I do know is that it's something that is making Ohio State very uncomfortable.
And
sure, that was the one thing that Ohio State had. You beat us on the field, but you'll never be able to out-recruit us.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, I mean, Tressel did such a good job there toward the end of his tenure, and then Urban Meyer came in and jacked it up even further. Like, you will never get a player from Ohio that we want. Like, to everyone.
The thing about it, too, is that Ohio's total talent, like the top-end talent, is always very good, but Ohio is nothing like Georgia or Louisiana or Texas or Florida. Like, they have maybe 3 or 4 top 100 players a year, but it's not like,
well, it's probably different. It's probably deeper than Louisiana, just from a population standpoint, but it's not like Georgia or Florida.
But Louisiana has like a ton of top end talent every year. Like, I don't know how they do it, but in Louisiana, there's more. I would bet anything that over the last 10 years, Louisiana has had more top 100 players than Ohio has.
We'll have to do the research on that.
But like the idea of them coming in and taking one of them, that's like maybe 25% of the top 100 players that they have in this cycle is going to Michigan now, when that wouldn't have even been a thought process, especially considering the fact that running back is a position of need for Ohio State. Mm-hmm. So, like, I don't know. To me, it just seems like slowly but surely you're not going to take the rivalry back in a year or maybe even 2. But as you go on, every day, every year, it's leaning more and more and more towards Michigan. You start hurting them in Ohio. That, I think, is a statement not only that, you know, they're going to start all of a sudden getting half of the top 100 players in Ohio, but that they're an actual player that can walk into high schools and they're be taken seriously, and what that means for recruiting as a whole.
Well, it used to be more even, right? Like Desmond Howard's from Ohio. Like Michigan used to go in there and get players, and they had a shot. This is a much more recent development than I think people realize. This is a latter era Tressel and Urban Meyer era.
Well, the thing too that's so funny is that, like, if you have listened to anything, I'm talking to the readers, not you, Andy, that I've been saying about Michigan is that they lacked an identifiable recruiting strategy. And I thought that their complete and utter disregard for the state of Ohio was incredibly wrong. So I think now they've got four guys committed in the state of Ohio in the 2024 class. And I think 3 out of the 4 don't have Ohio State offers. But like getting back into big time programs and recruiting that state is what Michigan should be doing. And then supplementing their class with players from Michigan and Texas and California and all the other places that they go. But the one question that the person had who asked the question was, how good of a state is Michigan for high school talent? And I'll say that Michigan has 3 top 100 players this year, and Detroit is a very talented city. Unfortunately for Michigan, they haven't done nearly as good of a job keeping players home as Ohio State has in Ohio. Like, if you go back and you look at last year, there were 7 top 350 players and only 2 went to Michigan. The number 1 player, Dante Moore, 5-star quarterback, went to UCLA. And of course, every other Big Ten team is in Ohio and
Michigan.
The thing that Michigan State
and there's also Michigan State.
Is Michigan State,
right?
That
Ohio State does not have a Michigan State equivalent to deal with in its own state.
Yeah. Also, Ohio State did much better in Detroit while it was winning in the series in the last 10 years than Michigan did in Ohio. Like Ohio State went in and got a lot of really good players out of Michigan. Damon Webb comes to mind, guys like that. Mike Weber came from Detroit. Like there are a lot of players. I think Ohio State signed 3 or 4 players out of Cass Tech High School in Detroit, which used to be a, Michigan pipeline. So, but yeah, it seems like it's just ever gradually moving, and, Michigan does have talent in its state, and Michigan has to do a better job of keeping it home.
Yeah.
But to me, they start recruiting with a plan. They start doing this more often. Like next year when we do our little whose program's the best in college football vote, I won't even think twice.
Well, and remember, you said you always criticize the recruiting strategy. I think recruiting strategy and program identity are almost the same thing.
Right.
Doesn't it feel like Michigan came out of the pandemic with a very clearly defined program identity that it didn't necessarily have before?
Yeah. But it never really spread like if you to the recruiting side of it. Or I guess the recruiting side of it is go find underappreciated players who will stick it out through tough times.
Or go find people who fit what you do really well.
What you do. And that might not equate to higher ratings. And if that is the thing, and then it beat higher ratings twice, then kudos to Jim Harbaugh. Like
then imagine what happens when you get higher ratings and all that stuff.
Well, there's the other flip side too of it is like they might be programmed to beat Ohio State. I don't know if they are programmed to beat Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia 3 straight games.
Yeah.
And then the other thing,
the style they play, you play it with the level of talent that's on Ohio State's roster or Alabama's roster. Yeah, they can beat them. They can beat anybody.
Yes.
But the question
also
is,
too, like
are they
people
going
from
to
Michigan
work up to that?
From Michigan State will tell you that it all started going wrong with D'Antonio when they broke through into the national championship game or the college football playoff in 2015. And then he started out recruiting his typical players, bringing in higher rated players that didn't necessarily fit his scheme because they were highly rated, and then things fell apart.
Yeah, there were also
I think you have to be able to thread
issues with that too.
Yeah,
like that was.
So you have to thread the needle right, because it's not just go get better players now. It's like if you want to maintain that identity, you have to get higher rated players that fit that identity. And I guess that's the secret sauce at Alabama and Georgia is from the self-selecting sample of really good players that want to play there. They can say you don't fit, you don't fit, you don't fit. Right.
Feel free to go to Texas A&M or wherever you want to go because it doesn't matter to us.
Because it doesn't matter to us. Whereas if Michigan wanted Dante Moore really bad last year and Dante Moore didn't play the style of football or didn't have the personality, purely hypothetical, nothing specifically about Dante Moore, Michigan doesn't have the luxury to say no thanks.
Right.
Which is the building, which makes it so hard to build. But if I were a investor in college football programs right now, I would buy stock in Michigan before Ohio State. And I didn't, and like I would never thought I would say that 2 years ago.
I was gonna say, can you imagine in 2020 saying that?
Well, I mean, isn't it incredible what winning and doing good things does to the thought process?
Yeah. Well, and they've made changes, not like they were just doing the same thing and they finally broke through. They made radical staff changes. They made philosophical changes. That's what did it. and they did.
I mean, if you think about
the things that you've been saying they need to do.
Like Michigan is trending upward. Ohio State is treading water, maybe a little down.
Right. They're treading water in a very high spot. Like they're still one of the best 3 programs in the country, probably, or 3 or 4 programs in the country.
And I wonder if Ohio State will look back in 2 or 3 years and go, God dang it, we needed to win that national championship in 2021 or 2022. Sorry. Because there are some NIL worries with them. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think people are afraid that they are not engaging in the pay for play NIL situation, which has adjusted their recruiting plan. I think Ryan Day even said that he is going to be focused more on a local pool of players because they won't be able to
see that's a bunch of crap. They're a freaking Ohio State. Figure that out.
Whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
That's not something you want to invest in. Right.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear Because that's just
it doesn't matter. If you think that, even if it's not true and you think that, that is not the winner's mentality. Yeah. Now Michigan's coming into Ohio. Ohio State is, could they win a national championship in 2 years? Could they win it this year? Sure. They're still built that way. I'm just saying when you invest, you think about the long-term potential, and I think one is there's no question in the world that Michigan's trending up, right? Yeah. There is some
we are not
shaky...
saying that we think Ohio State will be bad.
No,
we're just not sure Ohio State will be dominant
built like Georgia
as they have been.
Yeah. And there'll be a thread about me on bucknuts.com now.
Well, as there should be. All right. Our next question comes from Joe. This is a fun one. What division will you miss most when they're all gone? I'm an SEC fan, but I think my answer is the Big Ten West. It's the most unique division in football with their throwback style of play that really won't be able to thrive without a division championship as a possible outcome. These schools will have to define success differently, and that will probably cause them to change how they do things, maybe without the on-field success, but change nonetheless. That's from Joe in Birmingham. That's a great question, Joe. That is a fantastic question. For me, it'll always be the ACC Coastal, because every year you could go into the season thinking this might be the year that all 7 teams finish 4-4 in conference play. That's what I wanted out of it was the most meh division in college football, and it was a joy. Like the greatest ACC Coastal actually wasn't an ACC Coastal game. It was a cross divisional game. Wake Forest and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's in the Coastal, Wake's in the Atlantic. But the Frank Beamer 0-0. I don't know. That's the enduring image of the Coastal for me, even though it was a cross-divisional game.
God, the Big Ten West is really tough to beat. I don't know.
I'll give you one. The SEC West.
I was going to say the SEC West because they had Alabama and LSU in it at the same time when both were kind of at their heights.
Auburn won a national title and went undefeated.
And A&M. That's always been the best division in football, right? That or the Big Ten East?
No, because remember, the SEC West was not so when the SEC split into divisions, the SEC East was the dominant division for the first 10 years. Basically, the Florida-Tennessee game was the SEC championship game a lot of those years. Alabama won a couple, but for the most part, it was Florida or Tennessee, and then it flipped, and then it took Georgia becoming what it is now for the East to have any chance.
I mean, if you look at the SEC right now, in general, Georgia, Tennessee trending upward. Kentucky's much better than it's ever been. Florida is Florida. Alabama still trending upward, in my opinion.
Yeah, still very.
I said that on Feinbaum last week. Did you see I went on Feinbaum to discuss our rankings?
I did,
and I laid out to Paul Feinbaum, who I think was really happy to hear that I think Alabama is the number 1 program in college football still.
He loves that because the Georgia fans are going to call in immediately.
Oh my God, it was hilarious. Some dude called it because my dad was watching it. I was doing the interview in my office. My dad was watching it on the TV in the living room, and I walked out, and the next guy called in, and he goes, "Paul, who was that on the line? Ari?" More like, are you kidding? It was like a Georgia fan who went nuts. And then my Twitter exploded with Georgia fans who think I'm insane. I got called an Alabama homer for the first time in my life. It felt really good.
Don't these people know you're an Ohio State homer?
Good Lord. Huge Buckeye homer.
Just listen to the previous 10 minutes of the show.
Well, also, too, it was funny because when I was on the Ohio State beat and somebody left a comment on the story that you and I did together last week about how I was perceived on the Ohio State beat. And people used to think that I was the shitster of the Ohio State beat.
They don't know what that's about. There's some beat writers that stir it up. You were not it.
I was not. No, I thought I was just fair and criticize them when it was warranted, which was probably pretty rare because they were winning a lot of games, but it happened. So
the trick of covering a beat when the team is that good is finding places to be critical because the fan base is being critical. They view it differently. And I had to deal with the same thing when I was covering Florida when they won, a couple national titles in football and basketball. You had to really thread that needle because you had to be careful. And I was always really cognizant of it. Like, I don't want to act like these guys aren't good. They're really good. But I also know that I have fans emailing me, what about this? What about this? I know there are fans that are concerned about certain things. So I do want to address them too. So it is a hard needle to thread.
That's exactly the perfect way to put it, because from the outside, if you're not a Florida fan during that run, or an Alabama fan currently, or a Georgia fan, you don't look at them the same way that you look at your team. And while Georgia was on its way to the national championship last year, there were probably 800 meltdowns about this or that from fans on the way to that championship. Now, if you're a Tennessee fan or a USC fan, you don't hear about any of it because you're not in Athens or Georgia, but it's there.
If fans outside the Alabama fan base understood how much consternation there's been about Alabama's offensive line over the last 6 years, it would blow their minds, because there are constant complaints over and over and over again. And in that period, I think they've won 3 national titles.
Yes, I think that the amount of complaints and worry from teams that are built that way is so much higher than just casual fans of other teams would know. So there's always places to pick those spots. But, I thought that I was fair and, reasonable. And, the good news is that I have been called a Michigan homer, an Ohio State homer on the same day, which means
you're doing your job.
That's the sweet spot. So say what you want in the comments. I'm here for it. Just keep reading. That's all we care about. Okay. But
we got
the Big Ten West was a perfect cocktail of craziness, wasn't it?
It was
craziness with the cherry on top, which was the hope of actually winning the Big Ten.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing about that is Purdue won it this year, and Purdue did not necessarily play. Now, Purdue could play some smash mouth, but they didn't really play like Wisconsin or Iowa or Minnesota or Illinois, and they won the league, or they won the division this year. But you've seen it with Wisconsin. Luke Fickell gets there. He hires Phil Longo. Phil Longo is not going to run the offense that they ran before. That doesn't mean they're not going to run the ball. In fact, Phil Longo's best offense at North Carolina had Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, and they ran the ball a ton. So it's different. So that says to me, we're trying to beat Ohio State. We're not trying to beat Iowa anymore.
Yes. That's why Wisconsin made my list.
Yep. No, I agree. But I do wonder, does that mean you have to change what you're doing at Minnesota if you're PJ Fleck? Because he built a program that was built to compete in the Big Ten West. Iowa, we've talked a lot about Iowa on this show. We know Iowa's offense is not changing. We know Kirk is going to be very stubborn about that. But in a divisionless Big Ten, you've got no chance doing what they do to win. Like you might be able to win 8-9 games, but you're not winning the league doing that.
Yeah. I wonder what the final product of Wisconsin is going to look like, because I think that I'm sure Luke Fickell is going to be influenced by his time at Ohio State when they won the national championship in 2014, where they were a spread offense that ran it down your throat.
Yeah.
Like they're going to still need to recruit those types of players that.
But you look at the spread out, like the best spread offenses are ones that run it down your throat.
Yeah.
Like they can run. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think that North Carolina ran it down people's throats last year, did they?
Last year they didn't, but in 2021, is that it? No, in 2020. In 2020, Sam Howell's sophomore year, they did. Like there were games, like in Virginia Tech and Miami games, they averaged like 10 yards a carry.
Yeah.
Like they were unstoppable on the ground at certain times.
By the way, if you did like a fan excitement poll, wouldn't Wisconsin fans be number one?
They should be. I mean, just the circumstances of that. The fact that a person who has been notoriously picky about jobs, who understands and helped build the program that currently dominates your conference, looked at everything you do and said, yep, that's what I want to sign up for. Instead of saying, I'm going to wait for one of these other jobs to open up. Like that tells you, because I don't think Luke Fickell didn't need to get out of Cincinnati as they head into the Big 12. They're going to be fine in the Big 12. He could have stayed there another 6 years and been pretty successful and just waited for Michigan to open or Ohio State to open or Penn State to open. But he looked at Wisconsin and said, you know what? I can do this here. I think that's very exciting.
Yeah. I mean, the type of person that can keep the elements of what made you consistent, but also enhance them in a way that can bring you into national relevant discussions. I mean, that's somebody who's made the playoff already. Like the promise of the transformation. Like, I don't think there's been one that's nearly as dramatic as Lincoln Riley was to USC, but I think this would be the second.
Well, Fickell's also proven at Cincinnati that he can make players outplay their recruiting rankings.
Yep. Well, he's a great eye for talent.
The thing at Wisconsin is, even if they improve what they, improve their recruiting operation, which they are definitely doing, they are still probably not going to be beating out Ohio State and Michigan on a regular basis. So that they need that little extra development edge to get them, get them even.
Well, what they need to do is they need to create a team that is good enough to beat Ohio State, Michigan, or Penn State, probably more so Ohio State and Michigan, 1 out of 10 times. Like, you have to have a team that could win that game 10% of the time. So when they finally meet them in the championship game, it wouldn't be the craziest upset of all time if they've won.
Correct. And I think you could probably pull it off to where it's a 1-5 or 1-4 situation.
I agree with you. I mean, some of the Wisconsin teams, there was one year where Wisconsin was beating Ohio State at halftime.
At halftime, yeah.
Of the Big Ten championship game. And I think that Ohio State ended up covering the spread of that game because it got out of hand in the second half. But like the idea that they played 2 full quarters of football with them, how many players away were they from winning that football game?
Right.
Maybe it was 10. I don't know. I mean,
So we will miss you, Big Ten West. And obviously, I'm curious, how does this change how PJ Fleck recruits and coaches? How does this change what does it change what Brett Bielema does at all? Because you can still win. You can probably still win 8 games a year at Illinois doing what you're doing now. And maybe that's enough. I don't know. So we'll see what happens there. Our last question, Ari, comes from Mark. The first one is just funny. The second one is a legit question that I am curious to get your thoughts on. Hey, Ari, why isn't Georgia's spring game getting more attention? It will be just the 3rd time in the playoff era that the last 2 national champions go head-to-head. The other matchups were CFP games almost 5 years ago. The second question is, what are your top 3 fast food desserts?
Oh, my God. I have to why isn't Georgia's spring game getting more attention?
That is funny. It is a matchup of the last 2 national champions. Now, I think
does it not get more attention?
He's just joking. He's saying that this is the last 2 they're back to back.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah,
but I think if we weren't assuming that Carson Beck is the guy, we'd probably be a lot more locked in on Georgia spring practice.
Is that a safe assumption? Like, what is that? Like, what is your confidence level in that?
High. Very high.
Okay. Because that kind of takes the fun away, doesn't it?
It does. It does, because you're like, what are they going to do now? Oh, they already know what they're going to do.
And win again. Yeah. They're going to win another national title. Yeah. So can we get to the good one?
Let's do it. Question? I'm ready.
Fast food desserts. Okay. Are we going to go 3 to 1 or 1 to 3? We're going to go every other one.
Let's go 3 to 1, and no Shake Shack shakes. That's too expensive.
Okay.
Like that's cheating. Those things cost like $7. So
okay. And I'm not a big desserts guy.
I know. I like desserts better than you.
All right. So I have 3 that came to my mind.
Okay.
What really occurs to me is just that McDonald's is king of all fast food, because every time we do these lists, I always gravitate to McDonald's items.
Yeah.
So my number 3 would be the McFlurry. Sorry, not the McFlurry, the Blizzard.
The Blizzard. Oh, the Dairy Queen Blizzard. Yes.
Yeah.
And that is.
And I don't know if that counts because that's the reason why that place exists.
It's definitely fast food though, because they do burgers and hot dogs.
They do burgers.
Yeah.
Cookie dough Blizzard is top notch.
Yes. I did the blueberry Blizzard for years, which is off menu. But they've got blueberry topping for the ice cream, and they'll just put it in there and stir it up, and it's delicious. And
I've never even heard of that.
The best thing about the Blizzard is when you order it and the clerk turns it over for you and it doesn't come out.
What's that supposed to prove? I've never understood
that. It is very thick.
Like, I don't know. Like, is that like supposed to impress me?
That it is thicker than a Snickers. Oh, by the way, Snickers Blizzard. Another tremendous one.
Big Heath guy.
Heath Blizzard is good. So my number 3 is the McDonald's ice cream cone. It's just simple. It's $1. It is exactly what you need. Now, the ice cream machine is always broken, as Matthew C. points out in the chat. There's a great story, I think it was in Wired, about a person who figured out how to create a hack for the McDonald's ice cream machine and actually created an app where you could figure out if the ice cream machine is working or not. And it would allow operators to fix their ice cream machine so that they are up and running more often. Like, that is the biggest, but then it got shut down. They got sued. Like, the company that makes the McDonald's ice cream machine and McDonald's for continuing to do business with this company, they're the worst. Like, they should be fired into the sun.
Well, the question I have is,
they're so bad at their jobs.
Is the McDonald's shake the Insta Shake stuff where they like still use, or do they go back to actual ice cream?
I don't know if
because like remember they
milkshakes yet?
The whole plot twist of
call
the founder.
Milkshakes. Yeah.
Have you seen the movie The Founder?
Yeah, Ray Kroc.
The whole thing of that movie was about the mix, but yeah, I mean, listen, I'm just gonna give it away right now. That's my number 1.
Oh, well, all right.
Because like to me, it's like 89 cents or whatever it is. It's like when you get it, you always want it really bad. You know, nothing hits as hard as that.
I disagree. And so my number 2 is the Wendy's Frosty.
Okay.
Wendy's Frosties are tremendous. It's just a great dessert. And back in the day, Wendy's used to have so many good things for 99 cents. You could do a baked potato. You could do the chili. You could do, they had quarter-pound double stacks in the mid-90s for 99 cents. There's no way you could do that with the price of meat now. But you could do a small fry and a small Frosty. You could have, to your palate, you love this, endless variety for $5.
For $5-6. Yeah, no. Okay, so my number 2 then goes really well with the number 1, which is the McDonald's apple pie.
The original McDonald's, not what they're doing now.
Yeah. Well, what they're doing now is fine.
Okay. All right.
Have you ever had the celebration pie or whatever it is? It's during the holidays, the pie that they make.
No,
it's a different type of pie. Oh, it's really good. It's not deep fried, unfortunately. But yeah, if you get the pie and the ice cream cone, you're on cloud 9 to me.
Let me throw an honorable mention in here. The M&M McFlurry is spectacular. But again, the machine's always broken.
My honorable mention would be the funnel cake fries at Checkers.
Oh, yeah. All right. So my number 1, you can only get it in the summertime, the Chick-fil-A peach milkshake. It is tremendous. They do peppermint around Christmas time. They do peach in the summer. They have chocolate vanilla year round. But Chick-fil-A milkshakes are very good in general. The peach milkshake is spectacular.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is I love Chick-fil-A. I think it's really good. I have zero tolerance for waiting for things.
If you're waiting at Chick-fil-A, you're a dope.
It takes for every time I want to go.
You're doing it wrong then.
Always a line that's
do you not have the app?
And I've never ordered fast food on an app before. Well, maybe I should get into.
You're waiting like a dope for Chick-fil-A then.
Do you have to get out of your car?
Yes. If you want to get it. So you do it, pick up in store. You say, I'm here 5 minutes before you're actually there. You park, you walk in, it's right there. You pick it up, you walk out and laugh at all the idiots in line.
Okay, I'm going to try that.
I mean, seriously, like if you are eating at Chick-fil-A and not ordering on the app, what's wrong with you? It's the same like the people who shop at Sam's Club and stand in line to check out when all you have to do is scan it with your phone as you're shopping. You can just walk out. You can pay on your phone and walk out. Like, how do people in the year of our Lord 2023 not have this figured out
like
yet?
if you're in, I didn't know you could do that either. But like I wonder like if you're like shopping and scanning everything as you put it into your cart, if like cumulatively the grab ass that it takes to find the thing and scan it every time you find something would add up to more time than just waiting.
I am going to Sam's Club after we finish this broadcast. I will be in and out of that place in 15 minutes.
How's that even possible? I've never been to Costco and been in and out of there in less than 40 minutes.
Because I have my list and I'm scanning it as I go.
How do you know where everything is in that monstrosity of a store? Do you know how many times I drive? I'll take my car back and forth.
Do you need the GPS for everything? I need a GPS
for Costco. If you know where everything is in Costco, then you're crazy. There's something wrong with you. Like
in Sam's or Costco, the only time you don't know where something is if it's kind of a seasonal item because you don't know exactly where they're going to put it. But yeah, you should know. Like I know where the fish is. I know where the fruit is.
Go find crackers in this place.
Okay, I know where crackers are.
They're in like 3 different places.
Crackers are in the middle with all the snacks.
I went to Costco.
I know where the wrap snacks are. Have you had the Rick Ross potato chips, by the way?
I haven't had it.
They're incredible.
Chips, no. But I see them all the time. But I always feel like if I'm going to get potato chips, I'm going to get the ones that I know are good.
No, the Rick Ross ones are amazing. They're honey barbecue lemon pepper. And then the little baby ones, they are basically every flavor. They're like the everything bagel of potato chips. Sounds like it'd be disgusting. It's amazing.
I have to ask you, or I got to tell you something. You know what the best potato chip I think I've ever had is?
What is it?
That one you were making fun of me about.
Oh, the Sweet Heat Golden Flake.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
I don't think I've ever. I can't. It doesn't exist.
I will venture that Zapp's Voodoo, which is kind of the same type of flavor, is the better version of that.
But I like the kettle chips less than the way that.
Oh, you're not a kettle chip. See,
I like both. I love both, but I like the texture of the Sweet Heat. What is it?
Golden Flake. Brand? Sweet Heat.
Golden. I was like, "Do you ever heard of Golden Flake?" And Andy's like, "Are you an idiot?" He looked at me like he almost stopped the car in the middle of the highway.
We're on a trip through the SEC, and he asked me if I've ever heard of Golden Flake. I'm like, yes, all right. I've watched a couple JP games. I do.
It's funny.
I am aware of Golden Flake.
But then I couldn't find the flavor that Ubben was talking about it too. I couldn't find it. And then on my drive home, I found it and I ate it. And I was like, God, this is good.
Here's another good Golden Flake flavor, dill pickle.
I've never gotten into that.
It's a good potato chip.
I've never ordered dill pickle.
It tastes great.
Right, I'll never get it because like the concept doesn't sound right to me.
It's tremendous. So, well, now I want a McFlurry or a Frosty, but I gotta go navigate Sam's Club. So
good luck.
If I get lost, I'll send out an SOS. But I think I got everything pretty much covered.
Okay. Well, I thought that was a fun show. I'll see you in a few hours.
That's right. Tuesday, Dan Wetzel from Yahoo joins us. You probably saw, I wrote a column last week about the NCAA stuff after the Notre Dame athletic director wrote his op-ed in the New York Times. Dan had Jack Swarbrick on his podcast. Dan and I have been pretty simpatico on this stuff for a long time. We talked over the weekend and we said, we keep bashing these people for trying to get other people to solve all their problems. We'll give them some ideas. Let's give them some ideas to get them jump-started to actually solving their own problems. So we're going to bring Dan on, make him commissioner of college sports, and just let him fix everything. It's going to be tremendous. We'll be back on Tuesday morning. We'll talk to you then.